Well, this is Baruch here, and I'm back once again, and we are learning Rosh Hashana. We're learning what? We're learning the Tiva Kavanos. We're learning the Kavanos of the ARI HaKodesh, or the Shar Kavanos. He calls it the Tiva Kavanos because it's after the author of the Pirush. So we've seen it before. We're going to go at it again, and I've done this year a number of times. Every time it's a little different. And I'm hoping that using the document camera, this camera like I'm doing, that you could follow along with me really well. But all of these ideas are very important, and they branch out into all kinds of different things. We're right now on page Ayin Aleph. We're going to read across the top a little bit, and then we're going to look at the Tiva Kavados to bring it back to us again. So the Rab, these are the words of the ARI HaKodesh. That's Rabbi Yitzchak Gloria Ashkenazi, the ARI HaKodesh, has spoken to Rabbi Chaim Vital. Now, we had just been saying and describing how it was a relationship between the Nachash, Chava, and Adam and Rishon. Now he says that there are many different kinds of Maimarim in the Zohar that talk about this. Over there it says that Adam and Chava were engaged in living together. And then the Nachash saw them, and he had a taiva for what they were doing. And as a result of that, after this, he placed his poison into Chava. But really we hold like we learned in this year yesterday. So the fish of Tov. And now the chet took place, and they ate from that tree of good and evil. Then that Avera put them into desire for another Avera, Lola his daveg biyom avov im ishto, and it caused as a result of that the yichud that takes place between between Adam and Chava on the sixth day im ishto, shadayim choyechol, which is still the weekday, which is still not the day of kedusha. V'lo v'himtim ad leil Shabbos shehu kodesh. They didn't wait until the day of Shabbos, which is really kodesh. Now this is in fact the secret of the eating of the from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. Ki das hu meloshen zivog, dav is a loshen zivog, right? Kamo v'yada Adam es Chava ishto, so he brought this das into them, and it caused the yichud. V'ish lo yodato lo yodo ke'elu ke'ela rabim. And so then we have different places where we see the concept of yichud expressed in the concept of das. Now let's go over here, and we find ourselves here at the beginning in number ches. And number ches is right here down below. So we're going to be reading, though, just the tiv on this. So he said, there's another way of describing the relationship between Adam and Chava and the Nachash. He says, Shekodem nizdavgu Adam v'Chava lenoldu kain behevel, that first they made a yichud, or maybe he means before that time that they made a yichud, and that Chava and Adam gave birth to Kain v'Hevel. And this happened that as the Nachash saw this, a sukkah betashmis, that they were involved in living together, nisava lehem, he wanted them. Now, if you understand Zer Anpin in the Nukva, in order to be able to get to Zer Anpin, which is really connected to the greatest source of the life of eternity, he has to go through Chava first. So first of all, he has to go through Chava. Chava protects. This is always the case, that the female protects the male, because the real energy of life, comes through Bina, into Zer Anpin, and then into the Nukva. But she protects what is inside of Zah. The Nimsa, the Fi Zecha Shakayin, the Hevel Noldo Lo Irav Tov Nolad Lo Irav Tov Ara. According to that explanation, that Kayin Hevel did not have already, Yeah, let me say the sequence the way it is. The way that the previous verse was that the Nachash entered into Chava, and as a result of that, when she make yichud with Adam, so there was already a presence of this force of taiva within Chava at the time, and they both had it. The taiva really won out. So then he says like this: "V'nim sezeh shekayim v'hevel noldu lolo iriv tov v'ra." But according to that medrash, that is that Zohar, he says that they had a yichud and it produced Kain v'hevel, and then the Nachash came in. So that's a different version. Let's see what he says here. Hasavora noita the divrei Chazal v'Chazoher harishayim shenitzka the el. So really, he says the Rav writes this, that the real halacha, the way to really understand this, not halacha, but the svar of this, really understand the explanation, is according to the way we originally said it. At first there was a Nachash, then it was Chava, then there was Adam Arisha. That that's what we learned before, that the first thing was that the poison was placed into Chava. And then after that, they gave birth to Cain and Abel, who had this evil born into them. So it's not, we use the word evil, it's this taiva, the taiva for physicality, for physical pleasure, of overpowering physical pleasure, which is the main thing that makes the world go around. Ba'ayin shefa gavonos, and this leads to all kinds of things if it's unbridled. The shachata Adam Arishon, bechet Arishon, so since he committed this sin, shall achilas eitz adas tov v'roa, v'achilas zos garma pu'ula v'hishtankus etzlo. So as a result of doing this avera, garma pu'ula v'hishtanos, it causes changes in the way of behavior. Etzlo by Adam Arishon, ki nisarav bo tov v'roa, because now there's a mixture within him of tov v'roa. Avera goreres avera, ki techilas kilkul hanachash choy b'pagam achila shel eitz adas. So the main thing that he wanted was I'll translate it better. Let me do better. Ki techilas kilkul hanachash, the beginning of the corruption of the Nachash. It was when they actually ate from the concept of taiva. That they mitav for something, for that eitz, they wanted it. And v'tekev shalet bo yetzahar, and immediately upon doing that, this taiva, you had there you have the beginnings of the shlita of the yetzahar. And this causes other veilers. So then after eating of something they mitzvah for, then taiva was already in them, you see? And now they wanted to have yichud right this second. They couldn't wait. So he says, so this was word shelo himtin. They didn't wait. Adam Arishon shlosha showers. He only had to wait 3 hours. Ad Leil Shabbos, which is a time when the Nachash has no power. The Shuhu Kodesh to his Daveg Oz, because that's the time to make Yichud. And you see this in the Zohar and all the things we're reading them over and over and again. Ella, this Daveg B'yom HaShishi Shuhu Chol, but instead they had Yichud on the 6th day, which is still the day which is mixed with badness. Now this tells us something about the nature of creation, and in general, it seems to me that he's saying that existed into the world already an element of gevura, of din, of accusation, of punishment. It was there waiting to come. The taiva brings it, and that's where we're at. So he says, Shnei pagamim elu, so these 2 pagamim that we've been talking about, the chet eitz adas u'mashu himtin ad leil Shabbos. So let's understand. Everybody knows the first part, that there was an avera that was involved of eating the eitz adas tov v'ra. So, but the other one is shelo himtin ad leil Shabbos, that they made a yichud before Shabbos came. So this is a mixture already of good and bad to begin with. So they all get tied together, wrapped together. Ki shneichem hu sod his tarovos hara, because both of them really mean that you're starting to mix raw shenigram al yedei b'achila. So first is that they had a taiva for eating this. So now they ate it, and now it's inside of them. The concept of the taiva that they wanted, they ate it. Vehebi lekach, and then after that, at the chila vehebi lekach shelo himtin, and that brought them to a point where they were so mistarved, they were so full of taiva now. You can imagine, we understand that people live together, there's taiva involved in it. Shelo himtim ad marishon ad leil Shabbos, so they couldn't wait. Umachbas kachem, because of this reason, near mazim shnechem ke'echad besod eitz adas tov v'rosh, so therefore there's a remiss to both of them. In the secret of the eitz adas tov v'rosh, it led to the second Avera. Ki das hu melashon zivug. And this is how he got there and how he started. Kedechsev betray. It says betray. Excuse me, I read it wrong. But who zivug the kedechsev basrei had written after this. For ha'adam yada as chava ishto. Then it says that he knew his wife. V'chein ksiv ish lo yada. No one knows. Shuhu melashon zivug. This is the lashon yada. What says refers to das. Das brings the energy of zivug into zir anpin. V'nimsa shuchu memora al inyan achila v'chazivug yachad. So this is the concept that the achila and the yichud went together. So now we see that there were two sins involved. One was the eating, and the other one was the inability to be able to control the taiva for yichud. Adam harishon shehem inyan echad v'shnechem. They're really one idea. V'shnechem nechlala b'sod chet al das. So this is, both of them are included in the chet that took place with this das. Amafurish b'Torah, which explained in the Torah, mavor ata ma nigram al yedei chet zeh. So now we're going to discuss a little bit about what was the result of this chet. So let's see, we have a little bit more time. So let's go back up to the top. And we'll look at number Yud Gimel. He says, so the Nun Gimel says these are the words once again of the Riyah Kodesh. So what happened to Adam Arishon as a result of his sin? What happened is that he had yichud on the wrong day, on the day of the profane days, the days that are mixtures of good and bad. Yom Rosh Hashana, because he said Rosh Hashana, who didn't kasha could know there's a very strict din. So I'm not sure exactly how it sounds like. I might be onto this a little bit, but I don't know. V'im hoya mamtim ad leil Shabbos, if he would have just been able to wait till leil Shabbos, who din a rafia, then it's a different kinds of din. It's a very weak din, maybe a sweetened din. V'hoya hazivug ahul kedikuno. Then the zivug that was making here would be in the proper form. And then zun would make a yichud on that day. What day? Ba'oz yom, which was Shabbos Kodesh, bebechinas panim bepanim, which is the way of Kedusha. So let's see, we have just a little bit here, and maybe I can do this in the time remaining. It says we start here with number Yud Dalet. L'holon b'vur ki yom rishon de Rosh Hashana. So we're going to explain later on. We're going to get into this. He says the first day of Rosh Hashana. He says hu b'chinas dinakasha. It's the concept of strict din. Din means strict white punishment. The fisha b'yom rishon adayim lo nisbasmo b'nimtuko holomos, because in the first day of creation, the olomos were still in a state of din. Understand that creation itself is an act of din. So what we're understanding, that we continuously creating things all the time. They all have to do with molding or forming something or limiting something or bringing it down. That's the concept of din. Is the left hand is a grasper. So he said, "In talku of the olomos v'yesh his rabos dinim." So there's a tremendous amount of dinim, but the raw dinim that punish. Aval b'yom sheni the Rosh Hashana, but on the second day of Rosh Hashana, hu b'bechina din rafi, it's a weaker din. Shein midas din metucha kol kach, it doesn't spread out there so much. Lefi shekavar nimtuku mixas dinim. It is possible, and this is the work of the Kabbalists, the Kabbalist, is to find a way to sweeten the dinim. The dinim are there. We're going to suffer in this world, it's the way it is, but it could be a suffering that could be managed. And this all goes back to that first part, because it's our taivas to get into trouble to begin with. So he says, Ilu choya adam arisha mamte daveg ad leil Shabbos. If he would have just waited until Shabbos time, the night of Shabbos, Razhu Yom HaSheni Shal Rosh Hashana, which is the second day of Rosh Hashana, Hoya Na'asa Chazivok Elyon, this would cause a yichud all the way up and down the ladder. Bebechinas Din Rafia, Kishachagavuros, Mis Mumutakos, when all the devuros would be sweetened. And this is the way that the Kabbalah always reads, is the concept of bringing sweetness to din, perfume to din. So Ravakasha Nivra Adam Arishon, by the time of when Adam Arishon was made, there was already a flaw, a breakage, or a lesion. I like the word lesion in both Zohar and Nok, the Malchus, that is Zeranpen and Malchus. Machmas Shviris Kalim, because the Kalim were not able to hold themselves together, and so far they broke. So there is this brokenness about Adam and Chava that has to dealing with reconstituting themselves in Kedusha. Shalom Malachim Kadmon Shekadma La'olam. Let me read it again. He says again, Kasher Nivra Adam Arisha Gavor V'choya Begam Bezer Anpin Begam Benuk Mach B'Shavir Sekalim Shalom Malachim, the original Malachim Shekadman Kadmoim Shekadma La'olam, that is the kings that ruled the world before there was a world. That was the world of Nikudim. He said that they broke. For Adam Arishan Choyitzarak L'Sakin, some Adam Arishan, that was his job, was to rebuild them. And even though there was already tikkun going on before the creation, he says, which is why this is really Rashash. This is what the Rashash says, is that of the Nai is like a partzuf. So Chagat is a partzuf, which is partzuf has two parts to it, Chagat and Nai of the Nai. But is Chagat the Nai the Chagat. There's also a Chagat the Nai the Chagat. You may not follow these words too well, I do, but it's something to hear. That's all. There is a parts of Kol Chagat. There's a parts of Kol Nai. These are the bottom of Zeranpin. Each one of them has a Chagat and a Nai. So that's what he's talking about. But the main tikkun had to be done through Adam Arishon and Chava. Partsufim were created as two different systems of light. That is, the light of Adam Arishon is masculine, the light of the female, which is feminine. And this is the development of Zer Anpin and the Nuk. So if Adam and Arisha would have done what they had to do, they would have completely rebuilt and put Adam and Arisha, eliminated the flaw that came as a result of too much light. That they ultimately, that the Nukva will be fed enough juice and energy that comes through Zer Anpin into her, to sweeten her up and to grow her up to the full height of Zer Anpin. It's Kumasa Shalema. V'hoya nishba kol shefa v'ha'olam hoya ba'latikon, and then all that shefa that would be pouring into Zer Anpin as a result of the proper alignment of the two would be pouring into her, and the world ba'latikon, the Gamor, bebechilis Yamos Mashiach, which would be the time now of the Mimos Mashiach, which we have the 6,000 years, and we're getting closer. It says, "Ilu choya adam berishim is daveg b'leil Shabbos." So if the yichud would have taken place at night, at Shabbos time, at night, behind the biyom sheni the Rosh Hashana, which would have been the second day of Rosh Hashana. He was created on the first day of Rosh Hashana. He had to wait to the next day, which is Shabbos, which is just a few hours away. She'oz ein adinim kashim kol kach, then the dinim would not be so strong. And then the yichud that takes place in the zun of a world, in the world of Atzilus, which is so panimi, so close to the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Naasa Rosh Hashana. That would have happened on Rosh Hashana. V'lo choyim is acher ad Shmini Atzeres. Now we wait until Shmini Atzeres. That's a whole piece of Torah that we need to learn in order to get over to understanding what's playing at Shmini Atzeres. U'v'nusaf l'kach. So in addition to this, you would say then that there was a continuous total yichud that would be taken. If they would have done that, then that would be what would be happening. So now we have to wait 6,000 years. Remember the Sifra Ditzniusa, it's a day of creation for 1,000 years. So here we're at the 6,000th year, is that right back, we're coming right back to that time where the potential yichud could take place between Abba and Chava. We await the Mashiach should bring us over to that spot. But now I'm not sure what he means by shah. It's a momentary zivug, but parts of Hashana bilvad. So now the yichud that takes place in Rosh Hashanah is not the ultimate yichud. It's a yichud that is needed to bring the bracha in for the year. It's just, and then next year going to be another year with all kinds of different things that happen to us and all different kinds of problems. Parts of Hashanasi Atzma, mischalek, the parts of Azamanim Shal Choref. So that would be that what? Let me read this in. Like all the parts of Hashanasi Atzma will be divided into two different partsufim. That's where we are now. The parts of Azamanim Shal Choref, there's a time that has to do with the winter time. Rosh Hashanah ad Shmini Atzeres. The parts of Zemanim Shel Kayetz is also that time comes from Pesach to Atzeres, so we have these two special times that bring us back into Yichud again, so it has to be done one in the parts of what he calls it now again, once again, the language of the Rosh. It's the parts of called the winter parts of, which is masculine, he says, and the parts of called the summer parts of, which is feminine, and that's the shir for today. This is Baruch Fleischman, Tikkun, Elevator Kolo.